Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I'm excited for our guest today. We just met. This is Peggy Sullivan. She's down in Florida, which I love Florida. And she's going to talk a lot about busyness being maybe a problem. So I'm excited for that because something I've had to work on. So welcome to the show, Peggy.
Thank you. And I'm excited to be here. Our hustle society programs us to think busyness is really good. That doctor is so busy, I can't get in to see him for 8 months, but hey, he's worth the wait. Or, my next door neighbor who leaves at 7 in the morning and doesn't get home till 7 p.m. But he's a rock star. He's been promoted 3 times, but he doesn't have time for his kids, his family. I mean, there's just a lot of research that shows that busy doesn't equate to success, health, productivity, happiness. It's the real data on that, and I've interviewed probably over 20,000 people on that. Is busy is not better.
Wow. So let's get into that. That's a good way. We just kind of got into it. I love it. So what, what did you start out doing from let's go back to I always like to go back to childhood, growing up, what did you get into and what kind of led you down to the path that you're on in this whole busyness. By the way, author, TEDx talk speaker, doing some cool things.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up the daughter of an immigrant, and I saw him work all the time. And for him, he came from Germany, he escaped a concentration camp, he grew up with nothing. And so for him, hard work was really important, and to build his financial stability to a point where he would never feel like the rug was ripped out from under him again. So that's what I saw as a daughter, was the strong work ethic, and how it was so important. So then, pretty much my whole life, just raised the bar, raised the bar, raised the bar. Oh, this feels great. I got this goal done. Check it off. Now I want to be a president. Now I want to be a CEO. Now I want to manage a larger department. So I kept on the bars, and then I basically had a wake up call that I couldn't ignore. And really, the wake up call forced me to look back on my life and realize I had had a lot of wake up calls. I just wasn't listening to them. And this one in particular, I had come home from work. I was working in a healthcare company, Blue Cross Blue Shield. I was in senior management. I was working a lot, and a typical day, 11-hour day, I come home from work. I am exhausted. I am ravenous. So I opened the cupboard to find anything I could to eat. And because I was a busy working mom, there was no food in the house. But I grabbed a bag of stale pistachio nuts and I chomped them down. And I felt this pulling on my leg. And I looked down and it's my cat. And he's like, Mommy, I haven't eaten in 10 hours either. Feed me. So I throw some kibbles into his dish, and that's great. And then I fall asleep on the couch, and I wake up to this horrible gagging noise, and I look up. It's my cat throwing up pistachio nuts, and I look down and I realize I have remnants of pet food in my hand. I just ate pet food for dinner, and I was so burnt out. I didn't even realize it. I remember thinking to myself, these nuts are salty, they're chewy, they're not right. But I was in such a mindless haze. I just kept on going. And I'm a fur lover, fur baby lover. And my cat's like a second son to me, and I could have killed him. And that whole situation just really sat in my head. And then I started thinking about my life and how, 6 months later, my husband walked out on me because he said we didn't have a relationship. All I did was work. There was no time for him. And he just lost interest in me. Those were his words. I lost interest in you. You weren't spending time with me. And then 6 months later, I had a stress related heart attack. and I lost the opportunity for a promotion that I was a shoo-in for because I was out of work for 3 months. And so,
Sounds like a heart attack.
no, it was just like a year of wake-up calls where I'm like, crap, this is just not working. And so I'm a research geek and I'm very research driven. So I thought I would deep dive into busyness and really understand, why are we busy, and is busy better? And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that busy isn't better, and that 95% of people are stuck on this treadmill and want to get off, but they don't know how. So that, and then it also told me lots of other facts and features, like, 69% of working people don't have time to do their day-to-day work because their schedules are so overstuffed. So this busyness was, in my mind, self-sabotage. It was kind of a choice, and we don't see it as a choice, but really our day-to-day decisions contribute to the over-the-top busyness. So I wanted to develop a process that would help me. I wasn't looking to help the world at that time. I was just looking to turn my life around and be healthier, happier, more productive, lasting relationships, the things we all want in life. And that's when I discovered this 3-step busy busting process that I tested with Fortune 500 companies, small people, individuals, 18-year-olds, 65-year-olds. And for most people that go through it, they end up regaining 5 to 7 hours back in their week. So it's pretty effective.
What's the steps?
Huh?
What's the step process? That's the next question, of course.
It's what I call the busy busting framework. Step one is about subtraction, and it's about eliminating low value activities. We all get stuck in these things that I call busy traps. Maybe you're in the email rabbit hole, or maybe every interruption that comes across your desk, you are like, you give into it. There's a knock on your door, your phone is ringing, you just stop everything, and then you pay a 20-minute switching task. I know for me, the other day, I was well into this Excel spreadsheet, and I was doing really cool things like one if formulas, and I was really moving and grooving. And my husband knocked on my door, and it's like, do you have a minute? And I'm like, no, not really. But I didn't say that. I said, sure, okay. And he proceeded to tell me that there was no ketchup for our burgers that we were having for dinner. Like, that was really important to me at the time, right? But it broke my focus. And I went to get back, and I couldn't remember the what if formula I was working on and where I left off, and just nothing. It took me 15 minutes to get back into it. So we all have a ton of very low value activities we do on a regular basis. So I worked with an industrial psychologist and a bunch of HR people to understand. And there are actually 21 low value things, that rabbit holes that we all get stuck into, whether it's always on communications, or, too many meetings, or not being present, whatever it is. And so I developed this busy barometer quiz to help people find their low value activities. It's on my website, and really focus on eliminating them. So step one is subtraction, eliminating low value activities. Step two is what I call mojo making, because I wrote my first book on happiness, and I learned all about the neuroscience of happiness. And what I learned is that when we are happy, our brain lights up like a Christmas tree, and it tells our body, you've got more energy, more ability to focus, more likability. It fights off chronic disease. It's like happiness is a superpower, but we all think it's a soft skill. So it got me thinking how most people think of happiness as a destination. I will be happy when I get that promotion. I will be happy when I go on vacation. I will be happy when I get a new car and I don't have to, take a bus to work. It's always all this conditions, and it's never about the here and now. So I thought to myself, you know what? What if we created happiness rituals, whether it was in the workplace or whatever, just 2 or 3 times a day where we just did stuff that lit us up and let that dopamine really start to flow. And ironically, busyness, we're busy because we like that reward we get when we finish a task. Even if it's something as low value as taking the garbage out, we feel good. We crossed it off the list. Yay. I know people that add in things to their to-do list because they didn't get stuff done. It makes them feel really great. And so this mojo making is very important because it makes you focused, it makes you alert, and it just actually makes you more charismatic, more likable. So I tell people schedule, happiness rituals into your day, and I do stupid things like I eat dark chocolate every single day at 11 a.m. I will grab a piece, I will unwrap it, I will smell it for a minute, and then I'll close my eyes, I'll pop it into my mouth, and I'll just taste it and enjoy it. And I'll eat 3 pieces and I'm done in 3 minutes. And I'm just more relaxed, more focused, more present. I mean, that 3 minute little break. And, I tested happiness rituals in the workplace too. I manage a very large department at United Healthcare. And I thought, I managed mostly customer service people. And I thought, oh my gosh, these people have such high jobs. Let's try happiness rituals in the workplace. So we all got on Zoom and we did dance parties. And sometimes we made birthday cards that we send out to nursing homes, or we'd sing happy birthday, whatever. The only rule was you had to be participatory in at least 4 a week, 2 a day, and they could never last more than 4 minutes. And ironically, I thought, well, this is great. And people were telling me they had more energy and they felt better and they were in a better mood. But when I started to look at metrics and first call resolution, which in the service business is uber important, it went up 33% in 6 weeks. So it showed me that you can really improve your metrics by doing that. And then the fourth and final one is it's really hard to know what to say yes and no to. Our world is pivoting, it's changing. What activities do you say yes and no to? We really don't have a filter for that. And so I decided I would research, and I actually did a research study with 12,000 people and asked them what made them feel like their cup was full at the end of the day. And I asked them what values were associated with that. And I learned that there are 4 core values that make you feel productive, healthy, and happy. One of them is energy management, self care, which is, spiritual, emotional, all the things that you need to do and need to take care of yourself. One of them is growth. My father used to say, a day without learning something is a lost opportunity. And when we learn new things, we learn we can do hard things, and we flex our resiliency muscle. And that's why that is such an important value. And then there's also authenticity, not just leaning into what your truth is, but being accepting of everybody else's truth. And then the last one is human connection. And we're in a loneliness epidemic, even though COVID's over, you know, 2 in every 10 people feel lonely, at least drastically lonely, at least once a week for one day. And The Surgeon General says loneliness equates to smoking 3 cigarettes a day. That's what it does to your health. So I always tell people, know your values, know them to such an extent, write them down at the end of the day and say, did I live my values today? And you know what? Chances are you're kind of ignoring one of them and you just incorporate it into your day. So I've been talking a whole bunch, and this is supposed to be a conversation. So please.
Awesome. So, what have you found since you started to switch that has been a change for you?
I rarely get to the end of the day feeling unfulfilled because I spend my time on what's important. I've learned my boundaries. I've learned that I cannot have a productive day if I have meetings all day long. And so I've learned how to go to meeting organizers and tell them what my goals are and how I'm trying to serve them. But I need time to be able to serve them, if I'm consulting or whatever. And too many meetings really interferes with that. And oh, by the way, 83% of the population spends 1/3 of their time in meetings, but only 30% of them are productive. So we all spend 8 to 10 minutes. It was a Microsoft study, 8 to 10 hours a week on unproductive meetings. So there's just so much that we can take control back. We're not victims. This is our choice, how you spend your day, aligning your yes and no decisions with your values, making sure that you subtract things that don't add value and making time for happiness. I mean, they're easy little micro steps. If you just focus on one or two, your life gets better. And the people that I've been working with save on average 5 to 7 hours per week, just through really leaning in and diving into subtraction, mojo making, and values vibing. A micro step.
Awesome. So, what do what's your next steps yourself as you're going out there? You've been, you're doing speaking engagements. You wrote a book. Are you going to write another one? What's on for Peggy?
I am writing another book. My first book was Happiness is Your Responsibility, and I kind of wrote wrote that book in memory of my mother, who died and suffered a long battle with cancer. I remember walking into the hospital room one day, and it was the last 5 days of her life, and somehow her mood lifted, and she was better, and she was happy, and it was back in the day that boom boxes were big. And she said to me, I just figured something out. I'm not going to be alive in a week, but I've got 7 days to be happy and to feel good and enjoy myself. And happiness is your responsibility. And so I really want to go back to that book and talk about how it is important to do it in the workplace, not just personally, but also professionally, and really how you go about doing that. So that'll be my next book. I want to speak more. If I was speaking every single day, if I was doing virtual workshops, if I was coaching, you know, I just love helping people because I know how it changed my life and made me feel like I had control back and that my cup was full. So all I want to do is help other people and teach them how to do the same thing.
So they don't eat cat food. I think that's a great one. Um, you don't want to do that. That's a good sign that something's off. I love that. There's always those wake up calls that kind of get you to the next level. Um, what do you run into as most of the, I don't know if the word is a blockage, excuse, a reason why people have a hard time with this? What is the biggest obstacle you find, if there's one, that people have to overcome in order to not be just about busyness, but be about productivity, basically?
Yeah, I think people don't realize how change works and that you don't have to make macro changes. These micro changes make a huge bit. I have a neighbor, her name is Jennifer. She's a single mom. She's vice president of an international brokerage company. She's a busy girl. And one day her daughter called me and said, Mommy's laying on the floor. She tripped over all the laundry. We haven't done laundry and she's not getting up. I'm really concerned. So I go over there and I'm like, Jen, what's going on? And she says, I have no time for self-care. I'm exhausted all the time. What I'm doing isn't working, but I have so many responsibilities. I have no time for self-care. And I asked her if she had 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes. And she said, yes. I said, okay, so start off in your morning. Instead of letting the kids jump on your bed and wake you up and start in chaos, get up 5 minutes early, go have a cup of coffee. You live in Florida, go sit outside on your deck and for 5 minutes, just breathe. So she did that and she says, oh my God, my mornings, I'm starting my day. This is really great. She says, but I get to work and work is just chaotic and it's one thing after another. And I asked her if she was taking breaks during the week, during her day. She said, no, absolutely not. I said, well, what would happen if when you're making your kids lunch, you actually made a sandwich for yourself and every day you hard coded in 15 minutes, where you actually walk outside, eat your sandwich, and just feel the sun on your face? That worked. So all of a sudden, she's spending 15 minutes on herself. And then she says, the only thing that's not going well is I'm not sleeping. And I said, well, let's let's review. What do you do before you go to bed? She says, well, I work on my things to do list. And I said, oh. And I said, does that stress you out, make you worry? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, well, why don't you do a different habit before you go to bed? Why don't you keep a journal and write one thing down that you're grateful for? So all of a sudden now she's spending 20 minutes a day on herself. That's it. 20 minutes a day, not a lot, micro steps, and life got so much better. And so I think we tend to think that we have to do major things and we can really take micro doable steps and really change things. If you eliminated one or two meetings that are standing meetings where you don't get value or you don't give value and you get 2 hours back in your week, that's a win.
Cool. I like that. Guys, by the way, all the information we'll have in the show notes, Peggy's book, her talk, all the way how to reach her. So I know you'll probably want some more information. We always have 3 final questions and then anything we didn't touch on that you think are really impactful for our listeners. So, because I know we could go forever and this is a really good topic and very important. So number 1 is if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
For me, helper's high is the best thing in the whole world. And helping other people is the most rewarding thing in the other world. And so I think when times are tough and we're trying to do things ourselves, when you focus on adding value for other people, you get this energy level and then people want to give back to you. So I would say just be a good human being and help people around you. Ask them, what are your challenges, what are the things that you need help with, and how can I help? And that opens up so many doors to so much accomplishment, a feeling of worthiness, a feeling of help, a feeling of productivity, and then these people give back. They want to help you.
Like that. Second question, what's one quote that you really like and why?
A big Mel Robbins fan. And so for me, I love her 5 4 3 2 1. And whenever I'm doing hard things, I just do that 5 4 3 2 1. I recently started doing cold plunging, which is a shock to the body when you first start doing it, but it's such a healthy thing to do. And so I use her 5 4 3 2 1. I look at the clock, and as soon as it hits where I can measure myself, I'm like 5 4 3 2 1 in, period, end. And so
Cool.
5 4 3 2 1 to me, when you don't want to do something.
You should check out one of her podcasts. Interestingly enough, you mentioned that. She just had someone on her podcast talking about how cold plunges aren't as good as we think they are for women. So you might just check it out. It's interesting because I've done a lot of that stuff. So I thought it was intriguing. Anyway, third thing is, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Right, that is a hard one. I'm very proud of being a mother, so I definitely want the whole world to know I'm a mother, and raising your children to make contributions in the world is really important. But I don't know, it may have something to do is that, there is so much living to do when we go beyond busy. So that may be what I put on my gravestone.
Great mom living beyond busy, something like that. I love it. All right, you run into someone in a coffee shop. We talked about a lot. We went through a lot of stuff. What's something we didn't touch on today that you want to make sure that we leave our listeners with?
Well, I want them to know that busyness is addictive. I know that we don't always feel that we can escape busyness. Life just dumps on us, but the neuroscience of busyness shows that we actually get a dopamine hit when we cross something off the list, and therefore we do it again and again because the dopamine high is really contagious, right? So we do that, and really that's why this happiness rituals is such a great substitute, because you'll get the same dopamine high.
Good. Yeah, I like that. And it is an addiction, so I totally get that. I've gone through it. Most people know my story, and yeah, definitely a thing. So, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. If we go out there and we change one life or one starfish at a time, together, we can help change the world. Thanks for being on, Peggy.
You're quite welcome.